Hello, I'm Reverend Kate, here again from the Center for Spiritual Living in Carlsbad, California. And today I'd like to talk about divine harmony. So I was reading the Science of Mind textbook the other day, and I came across this passage by Ernest Holmes. So I'm going to start by reading it. This is what he said. The whole of spirit is potentially focused in our individual objective consciousness. But we have not yet evolved to a realization of this, except in a slight degree. We approach and contact the larger spirit through our own spirit or conscious mind. The doorway to the absolute stands open at the center of our intuitive perception. We enter the absolute through that which appears to be finite, because the finite must be drawn from the infinite. This spirit, which animates us, is the same spirit which animates all life and everything that lives. Emerson said that we animate what we see, and we see what we animate. The reason for this being that only as we truly see can the divine harmony be reflected through us and animate that which is seen. So I thought, oh, that's great. I want to talk about divine harmony because I really feel like we live in this amazing, harmonious, loving, spiritual milieu, life itself, and that we can take steps to experience more and more of the harmony of life instead of what we are often experiencing as what you could call the disharmony of life. So I thought, great, I'll do divine harmony. And then when I actually started trying to sit down and write my talk, I kept feeling like it was just so hard to explain. And I really felt a little bit, unlike usual, at a loss for words. I was struggling and, but I knew that eventually I would get there. So this morning I did an affirmative prayer, knowing that I was going to be able to write my talk. And wouldn't you know it, I then went over back to my computer and I had received a spiritual mind treatment from another minister who was sending them out. It was her day to send them out to a group of ministers. And it was all about divine harmony. So I just want to read a word from it or a sentence from it that really kind of helped settle me down. She wrote, "Peace enfolds me and surrounds me right now. Breathe it in with me. We move with ease and grace, dancing in the joy of serenity. Walk undisturbed with me through life and refuse to be moved by the world of effects. Every experience in life assures me, us, of the demonstration of divine harmony expressing through all life. Good and more good is mine, is the ultimate truth. I marvel at how easily those things which used to disturb me no longer have any effect upon me. Peace and more peace is mine." Isn't that beautiful. That was by um, the Reverend Susan Overland. And when I got that, it was like, yes, we do live in a harmonious universe. And spirit does respond to our affirmative prayer. The spirit does respond to our thoughts. And yes, we are all connected. So that sort of made me feel a little more confident about talking about divine harmony today. I think that one of the things that I just want to start with is say, last month in January, every Sunday we covered some of the basics of the science of mind, explaining that there is something we call spirit or God, or you can just call it life, which is greater than we are, and it is a power for good, and it underlies everything, everywhere. And actually, it's more than everything everywhere. It's actually all there is, and that includes you and me, because there's nothing else but spirit. So that means that each of us, you and I, are necessarily spiritual beings. Spiritual beings having a human experience. And of course, we're not all of spirit. We're some part of spirit. We're what you might call an expression of spirit or an individuation of spirit. So if that's true, that kind of makes us what you might call the children of spirit. And so necessarily we can reason out that there is good for us, that we can consciously learn to use the creative process of life, because after all, we are part of life, and learn to experience in our lives more and more harmony, love, peace, prosperity, all the good things that you might think of. Now, the primary way that we usually teach about how to create a life that is more and more in harmony with the divine is, of course, to use our thoughts in a conscious way. We say we should focus on seeking, looking for the good, and also focus on actually seeing, being receptive to the good that is all around us, because, we have a choice what we focus on. So there are a number of spiritual practices that you can follow to kind of become a more expert practitioner of the spiritual principles. You can follow spiritual practices that are as simple as reading or taking classes, just listening to what people who have gone before us have taught, and then to just be open to receiving direct inspiration during meditation, talking about it maybe with other people, comparing notes, because we like to say this is a scientific study of this thing called life or spirit. We're not trying to be delusional about it. We don't make things up out of thin air that have no basis in reality. You can also use affirmations or, of course, affirmative prayer, or what we call spiritual mind treatment. And then don't forget about other practices like journaling, like practicing givingness, practicing gratitude, just writing thank you letters, practicing forgiveness, generosity, loving kindness, paying it forward, practicing patience, seeing that of God in every other person. All of these are wonderful spiritual practices that can absolutely help you move forward in your life path. And you've probably heard about those practices before. Well, have you tried them? Have you ever tried them and struggled with actually doing any of those things? Or maybe you've tried them and found that, yeah, it helped a little bit, but it wasn't really long lasting. And that happens to me sometimes. In fact, this morning I was kind of in one of those stages where I had in mind what I wanted to do, but I just wasn't feeling quite up to it. I was kind of a little bit of a funk, oh, how can I clarify and pull my thoughts together? So it happens to anyone. Well, most of us. It certainly happens to me sometimes. I'll sit down, read a passage from an inspirational book, meditate, say my affirmative prayer treatment, then pop up, ready to take on the world or at least the day. And then a little while later, maybe doubt creeps in. Maybe I got a phone call that was difficult, or bills came in the mail, or I got on the scale and I didn't really do quite as well the day before as I had wanted. And after 2 years of going through this pandemic, watching the world go through this pandemic, I feel grateful for the vaccines, but I also tend to get frustrated just that it's gone on so long. And when I see and hear stories about other people suffering, especially, of course, when it's someone really close to us that has suffered from, well, either from the pandemic or anything else, there have been a lot of kind of associated issues that have come along with it, like people losing their jobs or having trouble paying their rent or not being able to find childcare. Lots of other things that have come along besides actually just the sickness. It's easy to just kind of go, I know this is supposed to be a world of good, but where's the good? Why do we have to suffer anyway? And is there anything that we can actually do about it? So that's what I want to talk about. The idea of divine harmony as being this condition that is available to you to experience, and yet sometimes it feels like it's out there where we're, separated from it. So what can we actually do to stay more centered in divine harmony more of the time? So behind me, I have put up a picture by Vincent van Gogh of almond tree blossoming, and I think it is so beautiful. When I saw it, I just loved it. It just makes me think of something so gorgeous, peaceful, and perfect. And yet, if you have read much about Van Gogh, or if you have looked at his paintings, maybe you can sure find them on the internet, you know that he had a wide variety of paintings that he made, and some of them were unbelievably beautiful. And actually, I would say most of them were beautiful, and yet if you know about his life, you know that he suffered greatly from both physical and mental illnesses. Yet, he gave the world this wonderful gift Now, today, I'm sure that there would have been a lot more treatment available for him if he were living today. And that's one of those things that we can be grateful for, right? That although it seems sometimes like we're on a treadmill, our culture, our world really is making progress. But I just wanted to bring him up as an example of how any person, maybe not to quite the extreme that he exhibited, but then we have his pictures to look at to see his state of mind. And I don't know what you're picturing in your mind, and you don't really know what I'm picturing in my mind. So he's a good example. We all have our ups and downs. We all have a wide variety of thoughts that are just passing through or that we hold on to. And some of those thoughts are very, very positive and really help us see and understand the world and help us live a more rewarding life. Some of these thoughts help us know just how to treat other people, just how to be loving and kind. And then we have other thoughts that usually we think of these as being fearful thoughts, thoughts that just hold us back. Now, Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, Science of Mind, used to have a radio show, and he would give great short talks, and I recommend them. They're a lot easier to listen to his talks sometimes than to read his books, which tend to be, well, he wanted to cover everything in the book, so they tend to be a little wordy, and his talks are just crystal clear. And one of the things that he talked about in a talk about your personality was how when people had difficulties getting along with other people, a lot of times it wasn't because of anything that was actually going on in their lives at that moment. It was kind of a carryover from things that they might have gone through in the past. And, maybe the example he gave was that they might have had very strict parents, or they might have had parents who were very busy, and they might have gotten the idea that they were just not that important, or that wanted, or that cared for. And of course, I was a child of a working mother who was also a widow, so I understand what it's like to be a latchkey child. And even though our children had two parents, my husband and I were both working. And so I think maybe it's easy for children to get the idea that there's something wrong with them when it's really not true at all. Just think about the example simply of scolding a child, how the parent is thinking, I want my kid to be safe. But the child, not understanding the situation, might just get the impression, oh, I did something bad. That's just one example. So, in the Science of Mind, in Centers for Spiritual Living and independent religious science churches across the nation, we actually offer classes to help people work through and let go of some of these old ideas that weren't even necessarily based on the reality of the situation, that may have been based on the impression about the situation. And one of the concepts that we talk about that you may have heard is that what we need to do is move from a place of fear, being afraid of what might happen, into a place of hope, being hopeful, optimistic about our future. And that when we begin to have faith in a hopeful future instead of a fearful future, we're opening the door to more good. And I think that's absolutely true. But lately, I was thinking about one more thing that I wanted to mention and just bring to your attention. Especially, it's become clear to me um, in the past couple of years. Um, Another thing that I believe can be a carryover that people bring with them from the past is a feeling not just of regret, not just of remorse about something that happened in the past. And we often talk about you need to learn to forgive yourself for your past mistakes, and also to forgive others, not necessarily forgetting things that have happened to you, but to not carry it around with you. It's not, if someone did something that bothered you, it shouldn't be your burden to carry that around with you. So you don't have to forget it, but it's nice if you can forgive enough so that you can let go and move forward. So we have the concept of forgiveness of things that happened in the past. But the other thing that I was thinking about is just the idea of grief itself. Now, a lot of people lately talk about post-traumatic stress and how something that happened to them in the past can cause such a high degree of stress, anxiety, that it can even outpicture in both mental and physical problems for them and make it harder for them to get by day to day. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about, sometimes that's also true of just plain old simple grief, the sense of loss. I know in the past couple of years, a lot of us have lost people that we were very close to. And it's not just in the past couple of years. I just think because there's been such a focus on it, that it's a little bit more of a shared experience. Where before in my life, obviously, people that I knew passed away or also moved away, or perhaps even had an altercation for some reason and went our different ways, or just maybe we're not so close anymore because we grew in different directions. There's also the loss that people have of jobs or homes. Um, Lots of different things that can happen that we tend, in our culture at least, to say, "Oh, just soldier on, buckle up, buck up, just, keep smiling, keep your chin up and keep going." And if you are always doing that, you may have in your unconscious mind some unresolved grief that can actually create an unconscious barrier to being able to move forward in your spiritual practice. So, what I'm suggesting today when we talk about divine harmony is don't be afraid to examine everything, good or bad, with an open mind. Mistakes from the past, sad things that happened in the past, it shouldn't be clouding your vision so much that you're unable to see the beauty that really is all around you. People talk about seeing through a glass darkly. And that's what it means, seeing through a colored glass, not being able to see clearly, being too tied up with an unconscious mental atmosphere of sadness, worry, fear, can actually cloud our vision. So I don't expect you to be happy and jumping for joy 24/7. But what I am recommending is don't be afraid of what may have transpired in the past, because the truth is, whatever it was, you are still a spiritual being. You are still a spiritual being having a human experience here on earth. We don't live forever, of course. But while we are here, let's remember that there really is good for us, that it's okay to enjoy it, to see it, to seek it. You see, life is not just something that we live in. Life is actually living in us, through us. We say that we live and have our being in spirit, and spirit lives in us, through us, and with us. Since that is the case, our past becomes a learning experience, a mind-shaping experience. In our shared past, not just personal past, but our shared cultural past, actually becomes almost like the library of life that we can draw upon and learn from. When I think about my parents, I realize that I stand on their shoulders. When I think about my children, I hope that they are standing on my shoulders, so to speak. And we all have shared experiences, individual experiences, a wide variety of experiences, and we all have a pathway before us, a path towards our good. And it is available to us all the time. We're always on it. When we recognize that that's the path we're on, when we engage in spiritual practices, it's as if we center ourselves in the middle of the pathway where we belong, where the way is easier, the road is clearer, the path is smoother, and the light is brighter. This is what I know. This is what I wanted to share with you today, because I know there is good. This is a world of good. This is a universe of good. And we live in harmony with it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you will have a wonderful week. And next week, I think we will hear from Reverend Ron as we continue exploring ways to have a wonderful, wonderful, joyous life. So blessings to you. Thank you so much. Peace be with you.